Friends, family and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Delboy blog. And as always, I'll date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 19, or in legacy numbers, it's the 176th blog that I've done. And it's the 6th of July, 2025. We're in July, yes. And usually I'll just sort of do a sort of like a summary of what's going on right now. Well, it's pouring down with rain. There's been thunder. We need that. My garden's grass is just brown, even though I water it every couple of days. I don't do it every day because of the water bill, to be quite honest. Trying to keep costs down. And that's been on my mind all this week, is keeping costs down. Me and my sister are always sort of like tit for tatting a little bit, because my sister will want me to go and do the weekly shop, and she'll say, oh, buy some parsley sauce, buy some salmon fillets, if you can get some mince, some proper vegetables. We need some more I don't know, pull-ups, which cost £15 for 10. Get some ice cream and some raspberries, etc, etc, etc. And the thing about those is that when I try and budget, I'll try and get some good stuff mixed in with some cheap stuff. You know, I'm not averse to buying, I don't know, some bird's eye chicken hot pot or something that costs, you know, $1.99, because that makes the meal $1.99. You buy salmon fillet at $5.99 and parsley sauce at $1.99. The vegetables, £2 or £3, mince at £6, and it'll make 2 to 3 meals, and it'll cost about £6 or £7 a meal. And I want my mum to have the best, but with the cost of everything that I'm having to pay for at the moment, it's difficult because of the not being able to touch my mum's money. Now, my sister and I both agreed that the pension money was something that I've been getting for my mum for a year. So we used that first off, and then I used my money to pay the rest. And if anybody will tell you, the state pension is like 30 quid, 40 quid a week. And, you know, when you're buying that sort of like food, and then you need things like a replacement towel, because we've boiled sort of washed every day, all the towels and the sheets and everything, they're starting to become very sort of like non-soft. Do you know what I mean? If you like a flannel to, you know, and a towel to be soft, but once you've washed it, it starts to become sort of like a bit rough. You know what I mean? And you know, my sister likes to get this raspberry and something shower gel stuff to wash my mum with, rather than get a bar of soap of, you know, oil of Olay or Dove soap or stuff like that. And, you know, I bend the will and have to do that because I do want my mum to have the best. But take this week, it's the first of the month, so there are 2 bills that are not automatic payments, and those are the council tax and the water bill. Now, the electricity, the gas and the insurance goes out of my mum's accounts, and we don't touch those. They're automatic direct debits, so we let those go, and the rest is paid with the pension money. Now, this week it was council tax, which really obliterates my mum's pension for a week. You know, you get 230 quid. The council tax is nearly 200. But in this week, it just happened to be that this is the week that my mum needed to have her hair coloured. Now, she goes and has her hair done every Friday because we've tried to keep that as a normality for my mother. And a normal cut and blow dry is like every Friday, costs about 20 quid. That's perfectly fine, not easily manageable, done. But when you've got the council tax and then the colouring, and the colouring costs £95, then the pension doesn't cover it. And the only way that it can be paid for is with my money. And when you've got your own, then you've got the shopping to do, and you need fuel for your car, etc., etc. You suddenly realise that you've paid your bills, you've got this sort of like lump money that's supposed to last you the month, and a big chunk of it's gone in this first week, and you can't have that back from your mum. So it's gone. You know, the one thing that my sister and I had agreed is that when there was any spare cash left over with the pension, it does not go back into your own coffers to pay it. We need to keep that lump sum for the next week in case there's anything that might creep along. So, yeah, money has been on my mind this week. And, you know, a number of other things, mostly emotions, you know, the negative emotions, resentment being one, disappointment, dread, those sort of things have come to mind this week. And there hasn't been much of the fun side of things to lift it up. And when that happens, it really does affect your brain a little bit. And I do look at other people and wonder why sometimes that my life's turned the way that it has. Not that I would probably do much different, because I've never been a person that's, you know, not been a friend to someone, not tried to help someone, you know, and not tried to make people feel good and lift them up, you know, whether that would be a card that you buy saying wish you well, a film that's in a sale to lift someone's spirits, buy a game on Steam to see if that's something that will keep somebody occupied when they're on a downward slope, all of those sort of things. But what I have noticed is that to some people that is shown as a weakness and can be used and can be weaponized, you know, against you. Oh, you buy your friends or whatever it is. And when you're in a dark place, you think to yourself, what have I done so wrong? You know? And, you know, why is it that my luck is mostly bad? But that hides something that is actually happening that's good. It's just the good doesn't shine through when you've got so much mire to go through. It's like that dream you have, you know, that dream where you're running away and you suddenly are running like you're on a treadmill, or you're stuck in mud and you're not making treadway. And, you know, there's so many things going on in my life where I'm trying to look after my mother, and that's great because it takes my mind away from me. But then I remember that I'm really putting my head in the sand like an ostrich because I'm not looking after myself. There have been times this week where I've second guessed, did I take my tablets this morning? I got everything done for my mum, but I can't remember if I did mine. How far away am I from ordering my next prescription? Question, question, question. And I used to get, some phone calls and stuff, and I used to talk these things through, and you sort of vent and talk about stuff, and those are very far between now. I used to spend some time on YouTube. Look forward to say like going on a collaboration on a live stream, and those are very far between now. And then you're relying on doing something yourself, and then because you haven't done so much, you've become rusty. You then put something out because you haven't researched it enough, or put enough time into it, or and people will comment on that if you get it wrong. It's happened before when I was playing some friends' games. I'd get the odd bit wrong, and it would be brought to my attention, where I know these things, I just slip of the tongue, but it comes across as a criticism, and again, that's another negative. And but saying all of that, I'm chipper. I don't look like I'm in a bad way. I don't feel like I'm in a bad way. I feel I'm letting people down. I feel I'm letting myself down. I don't feel happy in doing things. I was so bored this week that I did a live stream. First, I looked, and I haven't done a live stream since, it must be 7 months. So I literally just loaded up some games, and some nice people came in and lifted me up, and it was great. But it was a short-lived buzz that the next day I was back into the real world. And I thought to myself, the live stuff that I've done, I suppose the most fun live stuff I've done has been with other people, and I suppose that's it. I've looked at myself as being a people person, and when those people are not around, I'm a solitary person that has trouble looking at the good. And that's why at the beginning of this year I said that I would try and look at the positives. It's been very difficult to do that. I'd love, and this is where it gets very difficult. Think of the best hobby that you do, and then think of a health reason that stops you from doing it, right? How would that affect you? And then take away the fact that you haven't got a wife, and you haven't got kids, and you don't own your house, and all of that sort of stuff. And then say, where would you be, and how would you survive? And then before you start going, I'd be able to, then add that as being something that's happened for 20 years of your life. And then think to yourself, wow. Because that's pretty much where I'm at. And I don't know what I could have done to make things different. But I'm going to change it all. I'm determined to turn things around. How I'm going to do it is difficult, because I patted myself on the back 20, 30 years ago that I could sit down and I could work out what was bad and what was medium and what was good. And I could turn a bad thing into a good thing, because there was only 2 bad things going on in your life. And if you concentrated on that and you got it back to a positive, then everything else was normality, and it was easy. But there's so much now bad that you get rid of one and there's another 15 you've got to work on. And that's where I'm overwhelmed a little bit. But I'm going to look at those things that I think are bad, and I'm going to try and look at the good in them. And that's why I started to use words earlier on like challenge. It's been a challenging week. It's been a mixed week. That sort of stuff. So I'm not going to put this week down as mixed, bad, challenging. It's been all of them. It's been a roller coaster of ups and downs. And the people that I have left comments for in their videos this week, and definitely all the people I spoke to in the live stream with Ian, they've all been absolutely wonderful. And if I hadn't have had that outlet there, I think I'd have sank. So I have to look at those people like Ian Hill, Muckman-Movies, Cy Robson, the people I've left comments for, Wee Bob Art, Maymeister, Steve's Gaming, Robert's Gaming, Colin, all of those people. But I'm trying my very best to be as clear and precise as possible. And sometimes things will become murky or not understood. There was one in Discord this week where I wanted to go and see a live stream, but it was being done at the time that I've been doing my weekly with Ian. Now, for the last 60 odd weeks I've been doing my weekly on a Wednesday. I thought everybody knew. So when I put down, oh, well, that, I can't meet that, I'm not going to be there, it was looked upon negatively. When I had to then explain it, it was good because somebody said, oh, I see what you mean now. And I was going, well, I didn't see how you could not see it. I'm not a person that's writing down horrible things. I'm a nice person. I don't try and cause problems. I try and avoid them. So if you look at a comment from me and it's looked at negatively, I think you could probably tell because I won't put LOL at the end or something. I don't know. Maybe there's something about that people avoid looking at, or they look at it, maybe he's put that LOL as sarcastically or something. No, I'm not that sort of person. So yeah, been a bit different. But anyway, we do the news first, don't we? That was just a summary. So we move to the war like we always do. And the article read that I saw just this morning. Kiev hit by barrage of drone strikes as Putin rejects Trump's truce bid. One person was being killed and 26 injured after a night of intense Russian strikes on almost every district in the territory of Kiev. The strikes came hours after a call between Putin and Trump, after which Trump conveyed that he was disappointed that Putin is not ready to end the war. And Trump's only just come to the conclusion of this, that he's not prepared to end the war after so many weeks of saying, let's have ceasefires. See what I mean? How can you be so naive is, I suppose, what I'm looking at there. But all I want is the war to end. I don't know how you handle a tyrant, and that's what I call him, like Putin, who just seems like he's in it for himself. I don't think he's doing it for the Russian people. I don't think there's anything good in it. Oh, we're claiming this back. It was Russians all along and all of this sort of stuff. An agreement was made. They're a separate sovereignty. you know, you're causing problems, and it's one that's affecting us on a global scale. It's the stage is now the world, not these two countries. So yeah, let's have the war end. News in the UK: the women's Euro football 2025 has started on Wednesday. Saw lots and lots of pre-build up to the matches and so forth. Two matches, Wales and England, have gone by. Both those teams have lost. Now, I don't know what the expectations are here. I think England are the holders. They played against France. They scored the first goal, but it was disallowed. I basically couldn't watch it all. I was busily trying to get everything ready for when my sister turns up to get my mum to bed. The next time I look at it, it's 2-0. The next time I turn the telly on after my mum's gone to bed, it was 2-1. It ended for England. The Wales match, worse, 3-0. But apparently they're in the group of death. Very, very top teams in this particular group. So, you know, I wish all the teams well. I'm fully behind, obviously, England and Wales and those teams, because my own sovereignty, I suppose. But, you know, there we go. But of course, I just want it to be a fun tournament. And so far, it looks like it's staying on the safe side, so that's good. The media have been overwhelmed by tributes to Didio Jota, who died in a car crash this week in Spain, along with his brother Andre Silva. Yes, nobody likes to hear about deaths. There's been two significant deaths from my point of view. One to the world, and that is this death of this footballer who played for Portugal and played for Liverpool. And, you know, I know how much it hurts when you have a sporting hero die. I remember how I felt when, you know, Muhammad Ali died, and a number of other sporting heroes I've had through the years, and it, you know, you just feel, oh wow, no more stories from that. And this is a person that died very early. I think it was 28. Had so many more stories to tell. I don't know the situation, I'm afraid, in regards to the car crash itself, whether it was speeding along a motorway. I know it was in a sports car, but that means nothing. You can drive a sports car at 30 miles an hour, and you can still die. So, you know, my thoughts are with the family, and it's fans that will keep the person's name alive. And, you know, this person's obviously paved a way in history. So, you know, rest in peace is all I can say about that. All this week there have been mixed reviews on Keir Starmer, and that's because he has just passed the 1 year mark of being our Prime Minister. And of course, every Wednesday there is what they call Prime Minister's Question Time. And to be quite honest, it was a joke. Laughed plenty, because, you know, the opposite side was saying what they haven't done this year. The other side was saying yes, and look what deficit hole you left with us, and this is what we've turned around in just 1 year, and just imagine what we're going to turn around in the next 3 years. And it's just a joke. It would be funny if it weren't for the fact that we're all going to pay for it. And all this, I don't know, but at work, I've always had the philosophy of, I don't care what caused it, I want it fixed. No finger pointing, no cause of blame. Let's just get it done. We can review it later on. Let's just sort it. Yeah. And everything in politics is, oh, it was that side that did it, and these that brought the down, and this is what we're doing, and all of this sort of stuff. And I suppose that's the downside I have with politics, and why I don't really talk about it too much, because I just look at it as being a bit of a farce. But it's a farce that's not funny, and it involves people's lives. So that's really all I've got for the UK news, other than to report of a death that won't mean much to probably the majority of the people that watch this. But it does to me. And if I mention the name Jim Shooter, does that mean anything to you? And probably it doesn't. But I've been a big comic book collector since my dad bought me my very first comic. And I've been a Marvel collector since I cottoned on to a character that emotionally I tied myself to, which was Spider-Man. He was the person that was in the background, that wasn't well liked, that liked sciences and nerdy things, and suddenly was gifted great power. But that great power didn't help him one bit. And I always thought to myself that I never had the looks, never had the physique, the body, but I always thought, I've got my brain. And in my brain, as long as I keep myself buoyant, I'll be okay. And one of the things that's worrying me at the moment is my mind is not in a good place. And I've got memory lapses as well. And those might have happened, and it was explained to me when I had the heart attack, that there would have been starvation of oxygen to the brain. And that could have caused certain areas of your brain to be damaged. And I haven't had a CT scan, but I intend to have one because of my sleep deprivation. So anyway, back to Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter was sort of like about the third editor-in-chief that I consider to be a fantastic person in that role. Now, he created at Marvel a storyline called Secret Wars. It's just about to be done on film, Secret Wars. And it's where the black costume of Spider-Man came from. It was a crossover event. So it was a special mini-series of 12 issues. And it spanned off a toy line. So Marvel then suddenly got into toys in a big way. And it turned the fortunes of Marvel around and turned comic books around, because then suddenly started to have crossover events where characters would intermingle with other character books. And there would be spanning story arcs. Now, some people will look at those as being a bad thing for comics. Sometimes you just want to buy your comic and you want it to be a self-contained thing in that world rather than something that spans across all the rest, because you're not familiar with those characters and you don't want to buy those books, and it makes little sense. And I get that, but it turned Marvel's fortunes around and they stopped going into bankruptcy at that particular point, even though they headed into bankruptcy again several years later. So he was editor-in-chief from late 70s to end of the 80s. Big, long chunk of time. Stan Lee was editor-in-chief, and he stood down in the early 70s, but he was there from the 50s all the way up to, say, like 72. And that's pretty long in a job doing that particular role, the editor-in-chief. That's the person who edits all the books and is the chief of that, and so has other editors that are part of those. It's a complicated thing, but basically he oversaw just about everything that was going on. he also championed something that Stan Lee never did, and that was the rights of the creators. When you were in the 50s and 60s with comics, you were a jobbing artist and a jobbing writer. You came in, you drew something, it wasn't yours. You sold it for a price to the comics. It then became their property. You don't own it. Now, like I say, Jim Shooter tried to change that around. He wanted to make it so that some of that art was actually still under the control of the artist. That if there were credits at the bottom of a story, they got the due royalties that they deserved. There have always been negative stories about Stan Lee on that he gave himself credit for doing everything. He created every character, he plotted every book, etc., etc. No, he didn't. But that comes from a much more complex issue with a person called Martin Goodman, who owned the actual comic book company itself and instructed Stan Lee to be the face of Marvel. And as a face of Marvel, he came across as the person that was the creator of everything, you know. Oh, because that's why at the top of the books it said Stan Lee presents. And that infuriated all the creators. And it's understood, you know, you're inflaming something. But it was, they signed the contract that said, yeah, draw this, it's not yours, it's mine when we've got it from you. We published the book, royalties all come to us, you got paid for it. That's it. It's like back in the early days, the actors have got no control over the film. Once it's out there, that's it. And then anything that goes on with that film pretty much goes to the distributor of the film. Later on, there was actors' unions and royalties and all of this sort of stuff. But basically, it was a one and done. We paid you a weekly wage to work on this film. That film's now finished. You got paid. Bugger off. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he worked on championship rights. He left Marvel and set up another comic book group called Valiant, now defunct, but it was, I think, the third or fourth company beyond Marvel and DC that basically was getting enough revenue to frighten the big ones. So there's that. He wrote his first professional piece of work for DC Comics at the age of 13. This is where this guy comes from. And so when he died at 73 this month, it saddened me, because there was so much good, so much intertwined with the character that I like, Spider-Man, that, you know, it hurt me as much as when Stan Lee died nearly. So, yeah, rest in peace, Jim Shooter. And if you do want to learn more about him, just type in Jim Shooter in YouTube. You'll come up with loads. So there isn't really much to talk about in regards to this week, which is why I probably did a bigger summary at the beginning on what's going on in my mind. You know, Monday to Friday is all about work. And after work, it's all about looking after my mum. Tuesday, I have physio. That doesn't change. Wednesday, I have my live with Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And that, without that, I think I would sink really badly. And it was an interesting one this Wednesday, because a friend of ours, Muckman-Movies, asked Ian if it was okay to come on, and of course that's brilliant. I'm not going to stand in the way. Of course, it's not my stream, but Ian said, "Oh no, I value your opinion. If you didn't want him on, he can't come on." I said, "No, of course I want him on." Bring him on. The more the merrier. Bring on whoever you want. And the guy's is in Portugal at the moment, I think. I think that's where he's at, Portugal. So, of course, he's using a mobile phone, isn't he, to try and stream through StreamYard, you know, like we are with our own professional cameras. You know, we've got cameras in our laptops or, you know, installed on our mini towers and so forth. So we're in a controlled environment where we control our sound and picture and lighting and all of that sort of stuff. This poor guy's on a balcony in Portugal. Got no control over the wind, the weather, people shouting, cars going past. And of course it did upset a few people. But it was a one-off, you know, it's a Wednesday where we're not going to turn around and go, yeah, the sound's bad, bugger off, come back another week. I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad he was there, and I had great fun talking to him, and I long for more of that, because the more I'm talking with somebody else, the more I'm bouncing more ideas on. So really liked it. I do feel for those people that, you know, that just couldn't take it, because the sound was bad on occasion. It really was quite, you know, sort of like distracting is the word I'd use. And we have to look at it that everybody's watching these things on different technology. Now, when I watch something that's not on my computer and I'm not watching it on telly, I'm using my phone, and this particular phone is more like a tablet because it expands out, and it's dual stereo, right? So the sound is really, really clear, and I can put my earpieces in, and it will be really clear. And there are other people that will only have one speaker. They might be playing on a tablet that's quite old. Depending on how bad the sound is, the clarity can actually be a knife sword, because it's so clear that distracted noise is really bad, where a single speaker muffles it out because the other sounds are more prominent. So yeah, we technology has come down in price. We buy higher bits of kit, and that kit causes problems when you've got a bad feed. So yeah, it was one of those things. But I had a blast, and I'll tell you what, if Ian wasn't there on a Wednesday, I don't know what I'd do. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. It did interfere with me wanting to sort of like be there for my friend who decided he needed to do a stream on that day. There was no other option for him, obviously. And that takes me away from that, and that makes me sad, because I can't choose between the two. And if you were to ask me to choose between the two, I'd have to go with the one which has been supporting me for 60 or so weeks, you know. And you know, you just don't want to be in that situation, do you? You'd rather not be in that situation. You know, but it's still not nice looking then having to go and see a pre-recorded live event, because I'll tell you the other thing that's really, really difficult, and I don't know if anybody's really thought about this. If you do something that's live, if you don't read out the person's question or text fully, and you just answer, it makes no sense. So say there was a live thing going on at the moment, right? And somebody called, I don't know, Llewellyn, right, said something. It's no good me going, yeah, Llewellyn, and I agree with that, yeah. Because to the person that's listening to it back, you go, what's he agreed with? I can't read the text, and the text doesn't always follow with the video. So if you weren't there, the live text hasn't copied across with it, so you have no idea what the person was answering about. It's a skill. You need that skill to read out that so it makes sense. But it's incredibly hard to do in a live stream, I tell you. As I said, I did a live stream myself this week, and I bet you any money I did exactly the same thing, answered something, and didn't bother reading out what I was answering about. I don't know. I haven't looked back at my stuff. I rarely do these days. I look to see whether the sound is all right and then leave it there. But yeah, that's a skill that you got to have if you're ever thinking about doing a YouTube thing. If you ever do something on YouTube and it's live, always think about the fact that the recording, once it's out there, is done and dusted. And if you're reading something that's in text form, if you're answering it in the live stream, you've got to read out what the person said to you. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. So bear that in mind. So we get past Wednesday. The busiest day for me is Friday. All that's going on here during work is that work is ramping up. That's all you need to know, really. I went back to doing the first thing that I did 3 weeks ago, which is the daily discovery board. But with a person being off work for 3 days, that's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we all had to muck in. The other two analysts, that's me and one other. And that means that we were pushed. Because on the very day that this person went on holiday on the Wednesday, 6 tickets came in, and each one of these tickets would take half an hour each to do. And I was already in the middle of trying to do my work, which was taking some time. But by the end of the week, we got those 6 tickets plus more that came in and got them down to only one outstanding ticket that's there at the moment. So we kept on top of it. We could pat ourselves on the back, etc., etc. And my manager finally came up to me, that's the big manager, and said, can you do this? And it needs to be done by 12 midday Friday. Can't be any later. Must be done. I was singled out to do it, and it was on the day that was the busiest day for me. So it was the hardest job in the world. And the reason for that, my mother needed to have her hair done, a hair colouring, which meant that she had to be down there for 10 o'clock. I had my dentistry appointment at 12:30, followed by picking up my mother and bringing her back, followed by the weekly shopping that I needed to do in my lunch hour, followed by looking after my mum when my sister leaves at 2:30. Now, if you look at all of that, you'll see that I potentially could be out of the loop for work for big chunks. Now, the work came to me at 9 o'clock, had to be done by 12, 4 spreadsheets that needed to be data cleansed to be in a particular way. I got it done 11:15. I managed to get my mother down to have her hair done. At 10 o'clock, she got down there for 10:15. I drove back, came into the house, did another 45 minutes work, checked it over, emailed it off, done 11:15. And that meant that I had half an hour before that, if you look at it, before I had to take my mum down. So I did it in, just under an hour and a half. And it was 4 spreadsheets worth of data. And I was, excuse my French, shitting myself how I miss them. I checked over it as best as I could, but it needed to be done. So I put it to bed and said, don't worry about it. Go with your first gut instinct. Is it done or not? And I took it as read, done. And I passed it across. And it wasn't my manager that thanked me or anything. It was my sort of like senior above me that just turned around and said, well done, now concentrate on the other tickets. And of course, at this point, I'm having to go to the dentist. I'm having to get the weekly shop done. And I finally settled that for me to get caught up with the hours that I missed because of all of that, I worked till 5:30 that night. No other way round it, I thought. And that meant that when my sister left at 2:30, the person that was suffering was my mum. Because I can only check my mum every half hour. And while my sister's here, she's sitting with her every minute of the day because that's her job to do, you know, to be with her mum. So that's 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Every those half hours, I'm checking to see if my mum's all right, get her a cup of tea, etc., etc. And the other bits in between, the 25 minutes while she's waiting for that, she's by herself. And nobody wants to be in that position. And it's an uphill struggle for me. And there was no other way round it. And all I know is I was running around like a headless chicken. And whichever way you looked at it, I was going to let one person down. And I felt I let my mum down. But not according to my sister, not according to me if I think about it, not according to my mum if she thinks about it, because she can't remember if I'm in there or not. She's reading her newspaper, watching telly, or falling asleep. So I'm knocking myself when I shouldn't be. By the way, it's pouring down with rain again. You can hear any noise. So that's my week. So there was a lot there to talk about. But I'm glad that I got it all off my chest a little bit. I feel like I vented a little bit. Nothing for you to worry about or worry about me. The things that cheer me up are the things that I'm going to be mentioning a little bit later on. You know, what all you guys have been doing on YouTube always makes me smile. The amount of content you come out with, the stuff that entertains me, astronomical. So we're going to be doing the shout out shortly, but I'm just going to, as you can tell, I've been talking for 46 minutes, just make sure that my mum's okay and get her a cup of tea. And with that rain, I want to make sure she's all right as well. So, back in a moment. That's the thunder. Oh my God. Hope that's picked up. Wow. So, back in a moment. So, we get to the shout outs. And I just, as you know, I love the shout outs. All these people have left a comment, wished me well, and my mum. And, you know, I can't be more grateful than I always am at this particular stage. I'll be reading out those comments in a moment. They've asked me questions as well. But the people this week are Carl Todd, Wee Bob Art, Ian Hill the Ramblings, Colin Jones aka Ponder, Martroid, Jambon, and Gans Teeth. And you know, there are some ones there that would normally have been written, but they've actually all contacted me and told me that there's things going on in their life at the moment which makes it difficult for them to write a comment. No harm, no foul. There's nothing wrong with all of that. I've got stuff going on in my life as well. I can't comment on every video that I watch. I always do a thumbs up on them. But that's just that. But that doesn't prove I was there. I hope to hear from them again soon. I wish them well. And we best move on then to what the comments are, and they're in no particular order. I'll just make the writing a little bit bigger, maybe. Might make it a bit easier for me. And the first one is Carl Todd, and it says here, "Hi Del, I hope that this week has gone well for you and your mum. I was expecting you to name your computer the Excelsior." Yes, because if anybody knows, I do go to people's sites and I always end the word Excelsior. And it's not because of Star Trek or anything. It's actually because of a word that Stan Lee used to end his soapbox on. He used to do a little column in every one of the magazines, comics that came out. It'd say what was going on as a sort of like a comment for the month. And then it'd end it saying Excelsior. And I loved that. So I sort of like brought that into my own little blog. Last week, he carries on. You mentioned wanting to have more variety in the food you cook for your mum. It made me think of some of the sponsored ads that I see in YouTube videos. There's companies, I think it was Hello Fresh, that delivers packages of ingredients and what looks like easy to follow cooking instructions. I have no idea about price, but it may be worth looking at something like that. Don't let people get you down by negative comments. Some people seem to just like complaining about things. I'm sure there are more people who follow you and enjoy your videos that may have just not commented. I used to enjoy your walkabout videos. Yeah, and I was actually talking about the walkabout videos. And again, I can't do my physio walk at lunchtime unless my sister's present and all of that sort of stuff. I'm going to try bringing it in, but it will require lots of talk and lots of planning to do that. I used to do it so spontaneously. So, yeah. But when it comes to the food, yeah, I did look at those things and they do look enticing. They would all be for my mum, though, purely because the ingredients that they have in those have got some ingredients I can't have. I can't have a certain percentage of onion, especially raw onion in my food. Mushrooms I can't have. All of that sort of stuff. And that meant a lot of the sauces I can't do, which is why I rely a little bit on my sister to cook base sauces. And so I could then do some cheap potatoes and veg that I could just steam, and then put the sort, those base sauces like mince and stuff to one side, and there you are. My mum's got something to eat. But at the moment, what's happening is that we're doing what I said before, which is the expensive meals, and I'm then left to do something in the evening, which would probably be a jacket spud or something with cheese on top, or a potato bake, or beans on toast or something. And it makes me feel like I'm not doing an awful lot, and I'm not giving my mum the things that my sister gives. But we're a team. I can't look at things like that too deeply. But I do, and it kicks me up the arse a little bit. So, yeah, all of those things you mentioned are absolutely worthy and spot on, and not been discounted. But very difficult, and a much more complex subject than I might have this week to talk about, but one that is bound sure to crop up again. Some questions you have for me. Here we go. Have you ever tried writing a game, excluding guessing a number and lemonade stall type games? If you did, what type of game was it? That's funny. I've mentioned it before. I'm no good at programming, and the only programming I did was Lemonade Stand, which is the one that you said exclude. So, have I tried to do something else? Yes, I have. When I was at school, there was a lad of mine, a friend called Ian. Yeah, Ian Mould, I think his surname was. He was good at programming, and I was more the creative one at doing graphics and stuff. And I thought about doing something for the Commodore Plus 4. That's his computer that he had, and it was going to be sort of like a canyon bomber type thing. I'd done a map of the main screen, which looked very much like what was that Paul Norman get Super Huey? Yeah, it looked like that. The bars came across the screen, so you had windows that were see-through that you could look at, and all of the controls were in the main sort of like lines that made up the cockpit view, and you had to do sort of like a death run, like the trench in Star Wars, and get to the end and bomb it. But only in this particular one, there was no exhaust port. It was all tanks and everything in a canyon shooting at you. You had trouble controlling the craft because of the fact that you're in a canyon means that the wind would blow you to the sides a little bit. There were force fields that you'd have to blow the tops off of to bring the force field down, and then there'd be a center port that you had to fire a missile into, which would have been done by a little HUD display where you controlled the missile into a circle, and it had to be dead center by the time it actually got to the point. So you sort of controlled it. So you had to be hovering and also controlling the missile. I did all the graphics. It never got written. I think he got halfway. We got the movement there. We got those sound effects. The scaling sprites were mostly there. I needed to do possibly another another frame of scaling to make it so it looked less jarring. Otherwise, it would have looked like that Cisco Heat racing games that we saw on the Commodore 64. The motion of the canyon was done by sort of like color cycling. The canyon walls, we couldn't do fractals, which we wanted to do. Not enough memory or know-how to do that. Yeah, that was a long time ago. 85? My God, that was the last year of school. Don't know what happened to Ian. Nice guy. We went to a YTS together, and then he got the job that and stayed on at the place that I was working at, but only 2 people from 25 that went to work at this company actually managed to keep a job at the end, and so the 23 others, me being one of them, were let go, and then we're on the dole, because we'd done our school project, we'd done our year of schools of work study under the YTS where we got paid, and that was the end. And it wasn't really until 1990 that I got any meaningful job. I was in jobs, but the meaningful jobs I mean was I worked for Lloyd's Bank. It was actually it was 89. Yes, so there was 4 years of several jobs that I did that I wasn't happy with, that got me quite depressed, really. Until I worked for Lloyd's, which I worked for 16 years. So yeah, a little bit there then. You then put number 2, do you have a favourite programming language? If I was to think about the programming language, I did mostly in BASIC myself, but I did study C++ when I was at night school as part of the computer studies that I was doing under the YTS. I think the thing that opened my eyes about C++ was it uses libraries. So you have libraries of commands. You had a main body of one, and then you had another grouping that would have been for graphics and all this sort of stuff. And those were the commands that you would use, and you would write your code, and then you would compile it, and it would have to have those libraries in for it to work on other computers. That was my remembrance of C++. I didn't do too much in it. Outside of BASIC and C++, I dabbled with a number of other languages that that did not have BASIC as its standard. So if I was drawing with a turtle at school, we would use a language, I don't know, was it Forth or Fortran? I don't know. To do the drawing, a bit like Big Truck. Big Truck was, though, simplified in the fact that you said go forward for 5 and you'd press up, and then 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you'd say stop, then turn right 180 degrees. Turtle language is sort of the turtle drawing program that used pens did a similar thing, and we used, I'm not sure if it was Fortran. I'm losing my mind a little bit. We are now going back to 1981, 82. So it's not that. It was only 2 or 3 weeks out of, and then how far back 1981, 82 is. So it's not a big chunk of my memory. But yes, I have dabbled in other languages, and C++ is probably my favourite. I've dabbled as well with JavaScript and some other things. Do you have a favourite studio is the last question that releases physical media, e.g. Arrow, 88 Films, etc. And I've talked about this before because I don't really know boutique labels very well, but I buy an awful lot of them. I buy from Arrow, I buy from, Screen Factory, Vinegar Syndrome, 88 Films, all of those. The Vinegar Syndrome one I've got is a lovely box. Oh, it's gorgeous. But I've only got one of them. Arrow, I've got a number of those. And those are lovely as well. Mixed in regards to some quality of those. A bit like Titan of Cult. Those started off being something that I was really passionate about and then started to diminish. They just gave you a pin badge with a sort of like Perspex outer case and a book, and then charge you a fortune for them. I'd loved to have been able to buy some of the really bigger ones. I think they're called like Meta Labs and stuff like that. They present you with multiple versions of the film, some with lenticular covers inside, some not, some with Blu-ray and 3D and 4K all in the same box, along with postcards, a book, an outer case that's gorgeous, made of velvet and all sorts of stuff, embossing, light up switches, sound even when you press a button, all of that sort of stuff. And some of the Japanese ones are gorgeous as well. And I haven't got those because I haven't got the 125 quid you need for one film. Plus, you have to order it direct from them, and they want it in 6 months in advance before you even get it. And if you went on eBay, they inflate the price by 2 to 3 times. So 125 suddenly becomes 250 and 300 quid. So I'd love those. Don't have the money for them. So I'm going to go with probably Arrow. But I like Warner. And I like, you know, some of the just normal distributors without having to go to boutique, like Arrow and 88 Films. But that's not taken away from any of them. They're all brilliant. Criterion would probably be a secondary one as well to that I'll buy. And he puts, all the best to your mum. Thanks very much, my friend. Salute to you. Brilliant. A lot of good stuff there. The next one we got is Wee Bob Art. He's put, hi Del, I enjoyed watching along while playing Cue Ball, which is a pool snooker game, quite relaxing game, just to have a shot of for brief periods of time. Yeah, that's what I like. I've been putting some smaller little games on that don't take up too much of my time. It would be good to see you out in your garden, even for just a short blog. Might help with the heat of the room, like you say. My daughter is a gamer and her room's like a sauna. I'm considering putting a heating system just fed from her PC to share the heat around the house. Yeah, you turn a computer on and a monitor, plus have the telly or something, and an amp on, and maybe a game console. And I tell you what, you're in a room that's 9 foot wide by 19 foot. It's pretty much what this room is. I think it's 22 by 9 actually. It fills with heat quick. And I've got no open bay windows. They've only got the little windows at the top that you open up. And it gets hot in here. It's a south facing, so I do get the sun in a little bit. Great for certain stuff, bad for other stuff, and heat is one of them, and cold. So it's cold in the winter and hot in the bleeding summer. But there we go. No real complaints from me. I go out of this room and cool down, come back in, carry on. And that's all that you can do about it, really. You continue. I've seen most of the movies you mentioned at the end, including Novocaine, which was decent. Monkey, I found not so great. Anyway, question for next time. What video shops did you use as a teenager? For me, there were 3 that came to mind. The original video rental shop was called Global Video, which is now the local library in Irvine. When writing this question, an image jumped into my brain, and I remembered a store called Ritz. Later, we had a Blockbuster, and when I lived a bit out of town, I just used my local Spar shop, which rented a limited selection. Weird how the memory can be jogged, yeah. I think I've mentioned this before. We rented videos before Blockbusters, and they were little boutique video stores that actually were usually split into 2 sides, Betamax and VHS. And there was one that was called Hollywood Movies. There was another one that was just like called Banbury or something video store. Can't quite remember. Blockbusters came along and we had that. There was one that was called Shop Around the Clock, and that started renting videos as well as SNES games. There was a special shop that you just rented games from that did tapes, which was around for less than a year because everybody went in there and pirated the lot out of it. And then when DVDs came along, I used something called Love Film that was owned by W.H. Smith, and I would rent 5 films a week and then send them back. I think there's one that I haven't sent back, and I think I still have the case for. I'm not sure though. If I can find it quickly, I'll do it, but otherwise we'll leave that for another day. Yeah, all my stuff is in the way here. Let's have a look. I think I had one in here once, and I pulled out. Yes. There we are. I forgot to return one. Well, the company went bust and they told me I could keep it. That was it. And it was from Love Film, look. It used to come in a blue envelope. This one, look, is Blade Runner in particular. And it's got deluxe box set written on it. Property of Online Rentals Limited. I did contact them and they said keep it. I do remember that. So that's a fun little snippet of information, and I've just gone and ruined all of that here. Oh my god. Just bear with me. These are all DVDs on spindles, which I need to put back. Otherwise I'll never get it sorted. There we go. So sorry about that, but I wanted to show that off, just to show that my mind wasn't going mad. It was called Love Film, yeah. Other than that, I mostly bought from W.H. Smith, Boots. This is videos and DVDs and stuff. When I was buying Laserdiscs, I bought them from a company called Laserdisc Enterprises. It was a catalogue service, and they did have a shop, and I visited it a couple of times when I was picking up the biggest items. So when my Star Wars trilogy came out, that cost £199, I didn't have that come through the post. I drove to Laserdisc Enterprises and picked it up from there. And it was weird because I thought of this place as being huge, and it was just a small little boutique shop. Out of the way. It could have almost have been in a housing estate, if I remember rightly. It wasn't anything like what I thought it was. It took longer to get there and back than it was to stay down there. And I went by myself because there weren't that many people I knew with Laserdisc players. Now, there was my friend Kelly. He had a Laserdisc, and Andy, who worked at Silverstone on the Formula One cars. He worked on the security and the networking. Had many times with him. Neither of them were available to go down at the time, but they did ask me to pick up their orders. So I did that. I remember that. And that's the end of your question. No, thank you so much, wee Bob. I hope that's given you a bit of an answer for yourself, at least. And we'll move on now to my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings, which I talked about earlier. Now, Ian Hill's a big supporter of me. I'm a big supporter of him. He's keeping me alive in regards to film. He pushes me to go back and doing some more film stuff. Because a couple of years back, I moved out of just doing computers and some stuff with comics to talk about the other love in my life, which is films and soundtracks. And I made some hedgeway into making some new friends in that particular area. But it's very hard to keep a balancing act between the two. There are some people that I know that love games and hate films, and some people who like films and hate games. And some of them you'll find the happy medium between the two, but they're very few and far between. But my particular YouTube thing is Retro Zone, a retrospective zone area of everything to do with me. So, of course, films is a big part of it. So, thanks to Ian for all his support. If I wasn't there, I'd have pretty much next to nothing to talk about when it comes to films. And, you know, he keeps me sane in regards to me remembering all the times that I went to film club when I was a kiddie. All the stuff that I collected on VHS, Betamax, Laserdisc, DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks, etc., etc., and all of the technology in between, all of the TV programs I collected, all of the films I collected, all of the books and reference books I bought, all of that is such a waste to not tell people about. But it's funny that I just don't get the outlet really much anymore to do that. But anyway, I digress. Ian has started off with, "Hi Dale Boy, hope you and your mum are okay. Enjoyed our live on Wednesday, and for the first time we had a guest, Jamie of Muckman-Movies. It was good to have him. It was from Greece." Oh, that was where it was. It was from Greece, bloody hell. And there was some sound problems. I will invite him back on again, and there will be no issues with the sound. No, because he'll be at his home. Today feels a bit cooler, so there is no complaining about the heat. I feel much more comfortable. This is how I like it. I'm sure, though, I can find something else to complain about. It's people knocking at the door claiming to be from the charities. It's like they're trying to make you feel guilty for not signing up. I won't put up with their nonsense. I say I'm not interested. I choose the charity I want to donate to for my personal reasons. I am at the moment on a budget, so I feel justified in this approach. I sometimes can get suspicious of these big charities which employ staff. You want the money to be sent on those who need it. It's not just me being a tight Yorkshire man. Isn't it? I'm only joking. I'm watching more films this week, and they were outstanding. The first was The Flowers of War, 2012 film starring Christian Bale, and was set in 1937 in China, surrounded by the invading Japanese. He had disguised as a priest and in charge of an orphanage with a group of children and prostitutes. I loved how it played out, and it was full of humour, but also very dramatic and emotional. It was good to see this period of history. The second film was Indochine, 1992, starring the wonderful Catherine Deneuve, a French film set in Vietnam in the 1930s, in the French colonial period. This was an epic. It looked so good, with some outstanding performances from the actors. It was a period of history that I've not seen any films portray. It's always the latter American involvement in the 60s and the early 70s. The third film, which I got so excited about, was Companion, a 2025 film. It's getting to be one of my favourite films of the year. Sophie Thatcher in a breakout lead role is amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. It's a brilliant sci-fi drama that becomes a horror that ticks all my boxes. I love this film. I did a review for my channel very quickly after I'd seen it. I hope it captured some of the excitement I felt. This is why I love films, because of the films that excite me. It can be from the 1930s to the present day. I love having them on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. That's the collecting part of me. It's not the fancy editions, it's the film that matters most and is in my collection. If a film is special to me, like June 1984, then I will get special editions. I haven't got many. The cost is usually too much for me. I'm grateful and happy for what I've got. I'm also very happy to collect DVDs. It's a format that I still love. So my question this week is quite wide. Do you think we write off old technology too quickly? All the best to you and have a reet grand time. As a nation and as a world, we're a throwaway nation. But is it because of the manufacturers for this? Just thinking about computers for a minute, say the printing industry. You can buy a printer and it will come with ink, and they're usually filled with half-filled ink cartridges. And then you can buy them as cheap as 40 quid. And then when your ink runs out, which will happen quite quick because you only got half-filled cartridges, you tend to find that the cartridges cost £35. £10 cheaper than the printer itself. So what do? Do you buy the ink? Or do you chuck the printer away and buy another printer? Because that's how little the difference is between the two. That sometimes, and this is a more regular occurrence, the printer is cheaper than the ink. We don't do much printing, thank God, these days. I have to say that I've got a printer scanner down here and I haven't switched it on in over 2 years. There are times when I need to print, and I tend to go into work and do it. I don't tend to print at home at all. And I've gotten more familiar with sort of like reading it off of the screen and emailing it or putting it into spreadsheets and that sort of thing, databases. So yeah, I'm not writing much, but of course, if I lose my job and I have to write a CV, I need a printer, don't I? Even when I'm returning something to Amazon, they do it with printerless labels, where you just take it into the post office, they scan a QR code, one of those little square barcodes, and bang, that's it. Thanks very much. Here's your tracking receipt, and that's it. And it costs you nothing. So yeah, we are a throwaway nation. Some of it is though through no choice. The one thing I don't like. So here's something I bought just recently: a petroleum weed burner. Basically, it's like a big wand, a big walking stick, a crooked walking stick, a handle that bends round and to a jet at the bottom. The propane gas spins at the top, right? And you burn the weeds with it. Yeah, I've done everything I can with vinegar and vinegar, salt, and washing up detergent to kill weeds at the roots. This burner is like having a Zippo at the bottom of a pole that you're burning the weeds with. Yeah, and you go over the top of it and that'll burn them at the roots, and that'll be the end of those. But it came with 5 propane gas cylinders from a company called Go something or other. Now, my fear is, after I've done this summer and I've got rid of the weeds, winter will come along and you're not doing anything much in the garden. Spring comes along and you've got a load more weeds that have all grown up. I will find that my propane canisters are all empty, and when I go to order it, I find that the company's gone, and those propane bottles aren't a universal fit, and you can't buy it, so you got to buy another one, haven't you? That's the sort of thing that I'm tending to find. Like you buy a Brita kettle, and you find that the Brita company that makes the filter cartridges have changed the size this year, and they don't make the old one anymore. All of that. It forces the consumer to have to chuck away what you had when you've got a perfectly good working device. You've just stopped them getting the thing that you need. K-Archer's the worst. Oh my God. I bought a steam cleaner from K-Archer, which has got these floor mop things, right, that you put on the head at the bottom. They're always out of stock out of K-Archer. And when you go to Amazon, they do a third-party one, and it costs more than the K-Archer official ones, and the K-Archer ones never come into stock. So there you are, you bought yourself a steam cleaner, and you can't even buy the bloody cloths that go at the bottom of them. All that sort of stuff drives me nuts. Sometimes we're forced. Sometimes there are wars going on, like the battle between VHS and Betamax, the war between DVD and Blu-ray, and then Blu-ray to 4K, and OLED versus LCD or LED, all of that sort of stuff. But those tend to happen when something breaks or through age. It's something that you have to use on a regular basis that pisses me off. And it's usually like kitchen and cleaning equipment that basically I get hit hard with, where I can't buy the things I need for it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I do think we write off old technology too quickly. It definitely goes on in the gaming industry. Definitely happens in the video industry. More prevalent is the cooking industry. Anything to do with your kitchen. Anything to do with gardening. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Terrible. So, all the best you say to you, and have a reet grand time. You have a great one, matey, and I look forward to this Wednesday. Have another little sip. And we come across, salute my friend, and we come across my friend Colin Jones, aka Ponder. And he's put, I remember 1976 well. The River Taff even ran dry. Can't remember what I was talking about last week in regards to that. See, my memory is terrible, but brilliant. With regards to your videos, it could be down to the time of year. Yeah, could possibly be. I think I've mentioned that as well, didn't I, last week? Send in my regards to your mum as always. You're doing an amazing thing there, I try. Regarding leaflets posted through the door, they go straight in the recycling without even looking. Yeah, I'm doing that myself. Talking about overcomplicated stuff, I've been tempted by the remarkable tablets that you can write on like it's paper. Yeah, I was talking about the ink screens that Techmoan was talking about last week. The trouble is, it's £389. It's good, but it's definitely not worth that cost. Yeah, totally. Even my Google Nest Mini only tends to get used as a timer. I've absolutely no need for home automation, because for me, it's just as much effort to get a voice-activated device to hear and understand commands in a noisy atmosphere than it is to get up and flick the switch. Even as a timer, I have to make sure any video running is paused before speaking. I agree, totally. I built an adapter so I could use 2 DB9 sticks via one USB connection. This was specifically for games like Assault and Battlezone, because I can use 2 QuickShot 2 sticks, which have buttons on the handles. Yeah, it's funny when I think about QuickShot, but the reason I don't like QuickShot 2 sticks, the build quality back then, it had a small base and a sort of like a spongy sort of like effect, with a massive handle at the top with a trigger and a thumb, right? But it used what they call lever arch connectors. Micro switches are sort of like little like pads that a lever presses down on, or a piece of metal touches down, right? Or even from the side, or inside a cylinder where the ball touches the edge, right? Lever arches, if you think about it, because they're a piece of springy metal that sticks up like that, they snap at the bend point because of the amount of times you're pushing them down. Daley Thompson's decathlon must have broke many a QuickShot 2 joystick. But they were brilliant because they had handles that you just love, the hand grip handle with the thumbstick and the point of view hats and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I never had a happy experience with QuickShot 2, but I do have memories of them, and I had many of them. So, yeah. You put games like Assault and Battlezone because I can use 2 QuickShot 2 sticks, which have buttons on the handles. There are people in real life who feel no pain. Most die in childhood. None become superheroes. That's that Novocaine bit there. My question for you this week. What were the first handheld games you had? Both traditional and electronic. Oh, wow. Earliest games I had. Do you remember back in the day, we bought or your mum bought you things like Etch-a-Sketch, or she'd buy you something that had water in it, and you had two buttons, and it pushed air, and then the pieces of plastic would float about, and you had to get the little bits of plastic to go onto hooks, and all you had was two buttons that pushed air up, and they flung up, and you had to try and angle them to get them onto there. Or you had a marble in a maze, and you had to get all the marbles in the holes around the outside, and you worked out really the only thing you had to do was put it on the desk, spin it round, and centrifugal force made the marbles go outwards, and then all fall into little holes. Or you had these little marbles that you had to go around a maze, and the whole board shifted like that. Those were the mechanical things I remember. But the first electronic game I had actually came out of a Marvel comic. There was two electronic games, one by Spider-Man, one for the Hulk. I had both. They were cheap pieces of plastic with bulbs, with a picture on where the bulbs were, and you had just a button at the bottom, and it was probably a randomizer, and the button would, the lights would light round and then light up one particular thing. You had to get to point A at the bottom to point B at the top, and there was a game in between, and all you had was a spinning light type thing. They were $1.99. You could buy them from very cheap toy stores, or you ordered them mail order. Until I bought a Microvision. That might mean something to you, Colin. In fact, I know it will. Microvision was by MB Games, if I remember rightly, and was the first cartridge handheld. And basically, all you had was a sort of like a block. It was like a rectangular block, and the cartridge was actually the screen itself, or sort of like an overlay. And you plugged it in. It fitted over the top of the LCD display, and you had games like Breakout and stuff. And it had a paddle at the bottom for you to play it. And you bought different cartridges, and I had about 3 cartridges. Breakout was definitely one of them. I can't remember what the other two were. And I had that, and I played on that a lot for about 2 years. And I must have got that in the late 70s. Around about the same time as we got Merlin and Simon as electronic games. But then I got Astro Wars. Astro Wars changed a lot of things in my life. As much as I love the interconnecting cartridges, which would later on become a stay point of what we even have now, Astro Wars, with its Space Invader type thing and its magnified window and its inbuilt case and a metal joystick that was just a little cylinder really over the top of a piece of plastic, firing like Galaxian type stuff. And this, I can even hear the tunes, and when you turn it on now in my head, was a great time. It took a lot of batteries. I never had a DC power supply for it. Again, my dad would have probably got it me for Christmas or my birthday, and the DC power supply would have been something he wouldn't have considered, and he bought batteries for it. I think it was a 9-volt display, a 9-volt power adapter, I think, for that thing. And yeah, great fun until I didn't really fall in love with a handheld again until the Game Boy came along, and I got that a couple of years after it had been in this country. The one I spent the most money on would probably be the Nintendo DS. I didn't have too many things like Game & Watch, but I did have one. I think it was Popeye, if I remember rightly. Game & Watch. Yeah. That's it, really. There's nothing more to say. Yeah, Astro Wars was probably the one that sticks in the mind the most. Thank you so much. And we'll move now on. Salute to my friend, and I'll talk about Martroid. Martroid's put nice pickup on that Dick Turpin set, Dell. Yeah, I bought Dick Turpin on DVD, thanks to my friend Jim Jam. Now, that's a show I haven't watched since I was a wee lad. It kind of reminded me of one of my own recent pickups in the form of the Clan Ed CD, past present, which I got for the princely sum of a singular New Zealand dollar. It's a lovely little compilation that I'd always fancied having, and features some great music, including the theme to Robin of Sherwood. Did you ever enjoy Clan Ed's music yourself, Del? Do you know what I did? Because I bought a lot of TV soundtracks back then to Minder and the Persuaders, is it? Some Captain Scarlet Century 21 records I bought. Monkey I bought the single to. All sorts of stuff. But I bought Clan Ed. I think it was when Robin of Sherwood came out. But then I think it was my father that said, I think they did something called The Fiend to Harry's Game, which was about the Troubles in Ireland, which was a 3-part miniseries. And so I think I bought the very CD that you've got, because I think it's got The Fiend to Harry's Game on there. And this introduced me to music like Enya and Enigma. And Enigma was big to me. Oh my God, Enigma. I think they brought out 3 albums. I bought them instantly. The first one I really played to death. Second one less so, but liked it. Third one hardly at all. They sort of came and went quite quickly. They had sort of like this monkish sort of like chants, sort of like religious hymny type stuff, but with a dance thud bass in the background. Really quite happy memories with that, but I can't think I had too much by Clan Ed, but they were intermingled with those ones that I just mentioned. So I'm just going to check on my mum now, because again another 40 minutes has gone by, but we're nearly at the end of these comments, and then we'll come on with what I've been watching on YouTube. So just be a minute. And the next one on my list is Jambon. And he's put, "Hi Adele, I enjoyed listening to this vlog, which while making what turned out to be a slightly too salty chili. Thanks. Love the question about naming your own computer. I'd personally day one purchase a Dell Boytronic 5000. On Manic Dell Boytronic 5000. Yeah, I suppose I could have used my name somewhere in there. On Manic Miner, I never had that or any other decent game as a kid, because I gravitated towards the rubbish film and cartoon tie-ins and Dizzy games when I played it for the first time years later. I thought it was very impressive, but just not my cup of tea, because I hate memorization and precision platforming. I have a question, please, if it hasn't been asked already. Do you ever watch those tier list ranking videos that folks do these days? If so, which have you enjoyed the most, if any? And if you were going to do your own tier list video, what would you be ranking? I know you're a massive ranker. Rhyming slang there. Yeah, I don't know where you're coming from. I reckon you could do a great one on the various Vampire Survivor clones. Take care, mate, and all the best to your mum. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to Pinfest this year. That's definitely on my agenda. And tier list and ranking systems. There are loads of them, aren't there? And they're, and sometimes I look at them like those reaction videos But I suppose I have watched a number, and the ones I've get sort of like tiered towards to a sympathy for is probably ones that are closer to what I like a ranking of the Carry On films, a ranking of the Star Trek films, a ranking of the Marvel movies so far, a ranking of the Elton John albums or the ELO albums or the key comics of Spider-Man was one I saw recently. But I don't tend to watch the ones that I have very little affiliation with. I haven't seen too many ranking ones for games. They've always been top 10 shoot 'em ups or top 10 um, platform games, top 10 SNES games, top 100 Amiga games, which are not ranking like you're talking. We're talking the ranking where you've got the letters like A to E, and at the top you've got S and A plus or whatever at the top, and those ones at the top are the ones that are perfect, and the ones at the bottom are the ones that stank like shit. And you've then got a bar to the right where you copy the sort of like covers into those lines, and you can see how good they are. The Doctor Who ones are quite good at that because they do them by seasons. You know, so if you did a Peter Davison one, you'd have all of his stuff at the bottom, all that rank stuff, and then you copy them across, and you can see the ones which were really, really positive, and there'd be ones that I'd agree with, like Earthshock. Earthshock should be at the top, along with Caves of Androzani and let me think. Peter Davison, Caves of Androzani, Earthshock. Trying to think now. Oh, not is it called Resurrection of the Daleks? Yeah, it's the. In other words, Earthshock is in the first season of Peter Davison, and then you've got two very important ones, Caves of Androzani and the Dalek story in the last season, which happened to be the third one. Five Doctors would probably be in the tier below that, along with possibly, I don't know, Frontios, Legopolis, that sort of stuff. And it'd go down to the bottom tier stuff that they consider to be the worst, like might have in their Time Slip, which I think is a bit, you know, and I'd look at it and I'd go, do I agree with that or not? And most of the time I'd agree with some of it, but not all. So I do watch the occasional ones. They're usually quite lengthy. I watch them over a period of days, and I either totally agree or partially agree, or what the hell are you talking about? So yeah, salute, my friend. Absolutely marvellous question. There's a lot of those around. Some of them are really quite enjoyable. Like I say, it's all down to you got your own mind on what you'd put in there, and it's interesting to see what other people put. That's me being nosy, I suppose. But thanks very much, Salute. I'm sorry about your chili. I hope I didn't ruin it. And Manic Miner, classic, matey. I think it's like a wine at the moment. It's one of those ones where I recommend that you've got to play it. You know, just to say that you've played a classic game that influenced probably 1,000 other games. You know, if it wasn't for that one game, but in itself is a clone of a Miner 2049er of a sort. So yeah, brilliant. Salute, my friend, and we move to the last one, which is Gans Teeth. Good old Gans Teeth. He's been a supporter of mine now for quite some time and has been commenting really quite a lot recently, for which I thank him definitely for that. And he's put, I enjoyed your Manic Miner video and didn't even notice that you made some slip-ups. Well, that's nice of you. Unfortunately, a lot of people did. I wouldn't worry about it. We all make mistakes. Just enjoy the moment. And I tried to do that. And I'm so glad it was chosen by my friend Mainmeister. Sometimes people will forget to choose an absolute stalwart classic just because they want to choose something that's either a little bit awkward or one that's not played very regularly or, that sort of thing. And we forget that, hey, there are other great games out there that do get a lot of airtime, but they just want to see me play that game. So it was really quite good. I enjoyed that. As you mentioned, the new 28 Years Later film, I realised that I've never seen any of the films in that series. Not avoiding them on purpose, but I've just never got around to watching them. Yeah, Danny Boyle film that basically doesn't, they always talk about, what was it? Is that a film? I think Sunshine. They talk about Shallow Grave, Train Spotting 1 and 2. Don't really talk too much about 28 Days Later, or they do in the horror circles, but not so much in the general chat. And you've put not avoiding any on purpose, but I've never got around to watching them. My question is, can you think of any well-known films you probably should have seen but haven't? And yeah, I dare say there's a million. But I got to think for a moment. That's why I paused there for a moment, because I knew it said at the bottom that, and I couldn't remember. And I was trying to think desperately for one. There's a whole bunch that come to mind straight away, and that is the Hitchcock films that aren't entirely well known. What we have to remember about Hitchcock is that we all talk about Vertigo and North by North North by Northwest, should I say, Psycho, The Birds, Frenzy, those sort. But we don't talk about his early films, the stuff that he made in the 30s and the 40s. And I myself don't have much of that Hitchcock collection. I've got all the bigger, well-known stuff where he was in his element, and he was a huge, huge director. I need to change that. I just haven't got around to doing it. I believe it or not, I've never seen the film My Left Foot. I need to get that changed, because it is a film that's brought up quite regularly in chats. In the same way that they talk about The Colour Purple, Empire of the Sun, all of those sort of films. And I never actually have got round to watching My Left Foot, and I need to change that. Let's see. There's a couple of Spielberg films. That's right. One called The Post and one called War Horse. Now, I've watched the big ones, of Spielberg, and even some of the littler ones, like Jaws, Schindler's List, all of those huge ones. The Post and War Horse, they're sort of like later titles, and I've never actually got round to watching them. I don't know if it's because they're lesser titles, but I've heard that there are some great stuff in there. There's a Tarantino film called Grindhouse, which I believe is split into 2 films and is nearly 3 hours long. And I think he did one called Death Proof, but I've seen that one. But I've never seen Grindhouse, and that apparently is a phenomenal film. I've seen Jackie Brown now, otherwise that was one I also hadn't seen. And then I talk about this in jest, because I talk about Denny and I say, oh, here's a comment from Denny, and it's almost like War and Peace, because we all know that if you ever read literature, War and Peace is a huge, huge book that is considered to be like a flipping tomb, you know, and it'll take you forever to read it. There's a film called War and Peace based on that book. It was made in the 50s. Never seen it. But I've seen most of the bigger ones. You know, I mean, I've seen most of the David Lean films. You know, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge over the River Kwai. I've seen most of the religious ones. The Robe, Spartacus. Some of the big epics like Cleopatra. And I've seen some of the later films that were done that were quite long, like The Postman with Kevin. What's his name? Anyway, The Postman, Waterworld, and all of those. Kevin Costner, that's it. But like I say, there are holes, and they need to be plugged. And I just, for some unknown reason, have not got round to renting it, watching it, downloading it, buying it, whatever. Most of the stuff that I buy, I have seen at some point. There is a lot of new stuff just recently that's behind me that I need to get a stamp in. There are some classics, absolute stalwart classics, that my friend Muckman-Movies has encouraged me to watch, and that was like The Seven Samurai. And I finally got round to watching that. And that was a shock to many that I hadn't seen that film. I've seen it now, and I've watched it a couple of times. Amazing. What stopped me from watching it? I had no idea. No idea. But yeah, there's a number, matey, and I hope that sort of like fills you in a little bit. And that is all the comments. So with that, we moved on to watched on YouTube. Yeah. So, you know, I split this sort of like into three. Watched on YouTube is usually the general one. And there are four in there that I always watch, which is This Week in Retro, Tecmo, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. For which Gadget Show I didn't see much from them. I think they did a short. But This Week in Retro was quite a long one this week because of the latest storyline, which actually was sort of like pre-mentioned in Mainmeister's Waffle. If you haven't got round to listening to Mainmeister's Waffle this week, please do so. Great guy. Always does a waffle on a Friday if he can. Which is the buying of Commodore by a guy who goes by the name of Perifractic. His name is Chris, I think. Chris Wilkins, I think. Chris's name is anyway. He's buying Commodore. And it's raised a lot of speculation, a lot of talk in Discords going around the place. You can't move or breathe without somebody wishing him well, or it's a bloody waste of time, and what the hell are you doing this for? It's very divided. From my point of view, I don't see the legacy of Commodore coming back, but it's not going to hurt me. He's not asking me for money to back something with, and I'd never send it to him anyway. Commodore to me was a huge chunk of my life. They hit me at a certain time where I bought everything Commodore, and they came and then they went, and I missed them, even though I moved on to the PC because after I had an Amiga for many years, I moved to PC and never really looked back. Their legacy is huge, but how do you carve a new legacy by just having the name? I'm very interested on what comes out of this, because I believe they've got some of the major players that were there in the Commodore in the time, like Bill Hurd, who was an engineer who designed the Commodore 128, the Plus 4, the Commodore 16, amongst some others. But he worked there at a time where Commodore was built into the same factory that make the chips. He could go down the stairs and talk to the guys that actually designed the chips he was building breadboards on as our next computer. He's not going to have that by buying the Commodore name. So it makes me wonder what sort of development you can sort of like do on this. But I'm glad it's happening. You know, in many ways, I'm glad it's happening. So that was a big chunk of this week in retro, along with the Stig from Top Gear. He's playing on an arcade game called Outrun, which is a fave game of mine in the arcades. And it's talking about the score that he did. So yeah, there was a number of things in there that I really quite enjoyed. The other one that I listen to is Techmoan, who does a lot of reviews on stereo equipment, that sort of thing. And he did a sort of a Kickstarter campaign. It's just come through for him. It's taken 4 years. It's a sort of DAB Bluetooth sound box with a clock built in, done by these Nixie digit things where they use electronics to actually display numbers, and they're different colours, blue and red and that, and you can take these out and put other ones in, and they have different types of effects. Hard for me to explain, but anyway, this Kickstarter, it actually been in it for 4 years. They finally sent him his copy. When he was there, he said he was less enthused about it, and it was quite costly and expensive. So it just goes to show you the dangers of going into some of these Kickstarters. And chronologically gaming, what can I say about that? He's still at December 1982 because it's a huge month for what was going on in the computer industry and console industry at the time, whether that be over here or over in America, but it was mostly America. Just trying to think now. Oh, and the 1982 game that was sort of like featured in that list was Golf, and I've played Golf a lot, so that was quite good. He was talking about the arcade there and a couple of the home ones because they were all released that year. So that was brilliant. So those were the 4 mainstays at the top, with only Gadget Show not really doing much. And so we'll move to a new one that came in my alert box called Multimedium, who did a history. This is a very interesting documentary, and I do like these on YouTube, that talked about the Creative Sound Company, you know, Creative Labs. They made the Sound Blaster, the AWE 64, the AWE 32, the Creative Z X-Fi, amongst many other sound cards. I bought a lot of Creative sound cards. I bought the AWE 32 and 64. And I've got the Creative Z SE. Although it's in a machine and it's not really being turned on at the moment. But like I say, they're in a very big competitive market. They're still around. I've got the Creative Pebble speakers here that I connect to my Mister, so I know that they're still around, but they're not the force they used to be. And MIDI is sort of like a secondary thing to them now. So there's Multimedium. After that, there is Tony Longsworth, who did a Heart of Neon music update, dated the 1st of the 7th, 25. And the reason that I mention that one is that I'm a backer of the Heart of Neon, because it's the Jeff Minter story, and I've been around since its inception, really. And I joined the Kickstarter on it, and they're starting to get to the point now of pressing the discs, and getting some of the additional stretch goals sent to us. So that was good. And sorry, there was a noise at the back, so I need to check it out. I'll be back in a moment. That ended up being seconds. It was nothing. I just shut my door at the back. And we get to another alert. This one's from Tony Longsworth. Nope, just mentioned him. So we get to Ralph's Retro Comics. you'll mention before at the very beginning of this that I talked about Jim Shooter. So he did a sort of like a little documentary thing about Jim Shooter, what it meant to him, where he first heard about him, and the later life of where he sadly passed away. That was a very nice sort of like memoriam to him. What came into the post this week, which was a surprise, was one called EXO If. Now, you may have heard me mention EXO before, and that's because I'm a big supporter of a thing he's done, which is about PC DOS games, where he's put all of them under one whole banner, and you can actually set up your hard drive and load PC games in DOS format or early Windows formats. He's doing one now called If, and it's really to do with adventure games. So he's got 825 adventure games, all from different platforms: Commodore 64, Spectrum, PC, Tandy, TRS-80, all sorts of stuff. And he's just started the project, and he wanted to announce that to everybody, and that's one I'm quite excited about, even though it's text or graphic based adventures. I remember them very, very fondly, and I can't wait to see how that actually progresses. And the last one under this watched on YouTube is Tech Review Guy, and he did when Laserdiscs ruled the world. Remember, I talked about Laserdisc quite fondly in the past. And Laserdiscs were big in the States. In fact, just before they came big over here, which was about 94, 95, 91 and 92, they were ramping up Laserdiscs in the States, giving people coupons where they could buy a Laserdisc for £1, and then subsequent ones would be at the full price. It was to entice people to get themselves down to the rental type store. Because we never saw them as for rental, I don't think, over here. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't have. And like I say, I love my Laserdisc player, and so that was an interesting article. So yeah, that noise continues, so I'm just going to go and check it. We're nearly there now. We're at the end of the chat, so just be a moment. And we move into film, TV, and soundtrack. And first of all, right at the top is my friend Ian Hill, The Ramblings. He's always somebody that puts out a lot of content, and every single one I watch and I have great enjoyment with, and I do a live with on a Wednesday. Absolutely fantastic. And just look at the content that I'm going to read out here. There's my top 5 films of comedy, years 83 to 87. A film review of The Night Has Eyes, Doctor Who review of Vengeance on Varos, a Colin Baker season story, X-Files review, season 4, episode 10, a film review of the film Companion, which, while talking on the live stream on Wednesday, we discussed whether there was a 4K steelbook of that, for which we were unsure, and on looking, I managed to pick one up, and it's going to be here next week, and it's from Italy. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then, of course, I did a live with him on Wednesday, where I had great fun. Cy Robson was there, Tony York was there, all of the great crowd. And a chat with Muckman-Movies. Brilliant to finally sort of like talk to him voice-wise, and hear his knowledge and how great a holiday he was having. A shame about the sound, but there was very little that you can do when you're on holiday. You've only got a mobile phone. It was a one-off, and the next time it would be in a much more sort of like productive environment. So I'm looking forward to him coming on again. I believe Ian will invite or accept anybody that would like to come on and chat with us on a Wednesday. The more the merrier. It's not exclusive to me. although he counts me as a sort of like found a spot, which I'm taken aback by, because I'm not a very confident person. I tried to make him laugh. I tried to put my input in there as best as possible. Some people to bewilder me with some of the titles they come out with, never heard of, but that's where I learn. And if you don't learn something, you're not doing it right. So if it's always going to be the same sort of questions that come out, I tend to find that it's not very good for the people that are listening. And so it's definitely a chat sort of like situation that I really, really love. But moving on from Ian, and I do hope that you do go and look at some of his videos, at least give a thumbs up to a couple of them. If you can, subscribe, you won't be disappointed. We get to Mondo Celovic Movies, who I watch religiously because I want to learn a little bit more about horror. Horror's always been a genre that I've had great interest in, and I've watched an awful lot of slashers and gore films and horror elements, but I lost my way around about the year 2000, and so there's 25 years of stuff that I'm not that familiar with. So it's a big chunk of me that means that I get a lot of enjoyment out of watching his channel. Now, he did a couple of videos. He did a 4K and Blu-ray pickup, and also did a sort of a ranking of the Friday the 13th films around the last couple, really, like Jason X and things like that. But he also did the one video shop that I remember from my past, and is now a library. So he's sort of like reminiscing a little bit like Wee Bob Art in his question, in regards to where he used to rent his videos from, going back and looking and seeing what it is now, but reminiscing about what he was renting at the time. So that was really good. Salute, my friend, I'm not worthy. I mean, my God, the amount of knowledge you know, brilliant. I then watched my friend Josh Through the Lens, and he did a Jurassic World review. That's something that I wanted to bring up. This film industry has been so far in a decline with trying to get bums on seats, and it's been mentioned a number of times in the live chat about how people are going into the cinema, and there are next to nobody in there. But this month, my God, for some unknown reason, the film industry had decided to bring out 3 top-tier films. They are Jurassic World Rebirth, the new Superman film, and Marvel's new family film, The Fantastic Four, the first family of Marvel. But they're all out in the same month, and cinema tickets are not cheap. There's a lot of people out there that would like to see these films and don't understand, why are you not splitting these out a little bit? Why isn't there one from last month and then maybe 2 in this month? 3 is just an astronomical number when it comes to like 13 or 14 pounds a ticket, unless you're getting a special deal or do a monthly watch, of films through a club card type membership scheme. So yeah, that brought up some interesting topics that I think I can talk about in the future. Moving on, salute, my friend. We get to Did You See That, who also did a Jurassic World Rebirth review, different to Josh's perspective, but that's what makes it interesting. We all like things and hate things in different ways. And he did a 1-hour conversation with his wife. Why not? Sit down together, get her face known, talk about films. Marvellous. Can't say any more than that. Absolute brilliant job. And then the last one is Movie Collector, who's done a retrospective of Apocalypse Now, which is on 4K, and I've got it. It's got 3 or 4 cuts of this film. And he did Terminator 2 on Laserdisc, which I've got. And he wanted to tell people how it looked like when you shot it through a projector onto a huge screen, whether it washed things out and so forth. I'm happy to report he thought it was an absolute excellent transfer. Absolutely brilliant. So I've just got to make another checkup again. I do apologise for this. But I keep forgetting I haven't got my mum her tea yet, dinner yet, and it's just gone nearly 2:30, and I need to check my sister because she leaves at 2:30, so it won't be a moment. So I'm glad I checked with my mum and my sister, because she's just left, and that means that I now have to check my mum every half hour. And we're on the last page of what I've watched on YouTube, so there's only that, what I've got, and I might, if I can, do some trailers, but that might be for next week. We're already at 2 hours, so when it comes to what I watched on YouTube, there is Down the Rabbit Hole. Brilliant guy, absolutely fantastic. He's over in Canada. He's done 2 that I've watched this week. One was called That Final Speech in Star Trek's Gamesters of Triskelion. Now, I left a comment on this one because when I went to the States, when I was going two times a year sometimes, I'd go to Universal Studios and there'd be the Star Trek adventure, which I was in. I've got a video of that, but unfortunately it's NTSC and it's tape. I need to get that digitally converted. But I'd also go to conventions. Sometimes they'd tie in with something that's going on in San Diego. And I went to a couple of conventions, one where William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were there, and they talked about that particular story because it's actually in some of the books. It was a second season story, but it was a story that was towards the end of the second season, and on the day that they were filming it, they actually said that it was going to be discontinued as a series. And so some of the emotions that were probably on the minds of the actors that were in that story overflowed into their portrayal of the characters. Very interesting, poignant video for you to watch from Down the Rabbit Hole. Definitely recommend that you go and watch that one. And he's also bought a new sort of like joystick. I think he said he bought it new. It was a Sega Genesis ASCII 2-ware joystick. And he was talking about the fact that you can buy this cartridge on the Genesis or the Mega Drive, depending on which country you're in, called Pac-Man Adventures, I think, or Pac-Man Adventures 2, where you can actually play the original Pac-Man by typing in a code. And this joystick loves it. Moving up, down, left and right. It seems very much a digital type thing. This joystick doesn't work with every game on the Genesis. So he wanted to point it out and say whether it was a good purchase or not. So that was great video. Down the Rabbit Hole, absolutely fantastic. Definitely give your time a little way looking at some of his stuff. And then I always talk about Robert's Retro Gaming. Canadian royalty. Output like, oh my God, nobody's business. Man, slow down, you little sod. Although, saying that, less and less output on the Commodore 64, more and more output on everything else. Don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's because the Atari and the Commodore 64 are quite similar. But anyway, just look at this output here. You've got Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 8, No Man's Sky Episodes 47, Minecraft Play Episode 145, Atari 8-bit gameplay for a game called Moti, which was a sort of like a strategy puzzle type thing, Mad Games Fire Chief, Atari ST gameplay of a new game called Defender 2025, which is the old Defender but made in 2025 for the Atari ST, and it looked really quite good. And he had got himself his Mr. Pie, and basically he set it up and played some retrospective games on that. At the time of writing, I think there's a couple more videos he's brought out since then. I know there's at least one. There was a Spectrum game that I think came out today, but I'll have to mention those next week because I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, I mentioned 9 videos, I mean, that's more than one a day. So, yeah, my God, if you subscribe to him, you're never going to get bored, are you? So, brilliant stuff. Then you've got my mate Steve's Gaming, you bastard fucking, you know, shit, you're just too good. Who's so greedy, he's got 2 channels, bastard. Right, now, he did a Commodore 64 short for Mr. Robot. He did a BBC short of Robo Man, I think it was called, which was like a Berserk. Homesoft Disc 71, which has got multiple games on that disc, you've got to remember. And then he's got a whole new channel called Steve's Spectrum Zone, for which he's got a number of games on there. Plus he's doing a little programming thing on there. So there's a lot for you to watch. Absolutely marvellous. I haven't got round to looking too much at the Spectrum Zone because there's less nostalgia for me with the Spectrum Zone. But I will try and get to that. And of course he's always playing games on there as well, so there's no reason for me not to. So that's brilliant. Then we've got Colin Jones, aka Pundit, and oh my God, he's done a number of things. He's done a Mainmeister high score kerfuffle on Dragon's Lair. He's done a video to show what the next game is going to be. It's called the Champion's Choice. For the main Meister kerfuffle. That's because you have a season of games and then the champion chooses what the next game is for them all to play as a one-off at the end. So that's great. And then he did one, I can't read my own writing, but it was a shoot 'em up on the, I think it's the PC Engine. I can't read it, but it says something like Overobj or THSC, something like that. You'd have to look. Go and have a little look at his channel, see how I've ballsed up the whole of that, what that's called, because I have. And then you've got 20th Century Gaming. So Colin Jones, thank you very much. Definitely go over to him. 20th Century Gaming, who did Thrust on the best version. And I agree with him. It is the best version that he played Thrust on. Thrust is on many different machines, but the one he actually played it on is great. Go and have a look to see which one he played. And he did a live last night on Roller Coaster. And he was going to do some more, but he played Roller Coaster all evening, and that was great. And then we've got my friend Mainmeister, who did his kerfuffle and a Sunday stream of games. And like I say, I'd like to have seen the watch along and that, but unfortunately it was at a time where I was doing my own stream. And that's the end of that. And I've only got one little rant that I've got, and it's aimed at YouTube actually at the moment. I noticed when I did my own live, and I was in 20th Century Gaming's as well, stream last night, that they've got this ranking thing now for you to chat with. So you put a chat line in, you know, hello everybody, hope everybody's okay, and he puts a little crown next to it and puts a number in it, 1, 2 or 3, and tells you whether you're the number 1 person chatting at the moment. What a load of shit. What's that all about? So I did a little search, and apparently it's to promote you as a creator to interact with the people who talk to you the most, so you interact with them more efficiently, and to promote sticker chats and things like that. What a load of crap. Don't need that. Apparently you can opt out of it. I'll be looking at that. I haven't had to at the moment because I've only done 1 live videos, and that was on Friday when I was a bit down on myself and a bit bored, and I saw it on my own channel, and I searched for what it was at the end of the live, and it told me what I needed to do, because you can opt out. I definitely will be opting out. It's not something that I think I need to know about. I want to interact with everybody in my chat. I don't want a singular somebody person out, and I don't need somebody to know that they're the number 1 chat person because they put 1 word saying hello or something and getting 25% experience points or something for it. It's very much like TikTok from what I can tell. That's my own little rant on that. So that's game and tech YouTube. I don't think I missed anybody out of the film and TV. No. So what has actually arrived this week So we'll go to the overhead cam, shall we? There we go. And there's been some quite biggish stuff, to be quite honest. We'll do the small stuff first. This one came in. It's a Luc Besson film called Subway. This got stolen by Amazon, and I had to buy another copy of it. And it took till now to get it. It is a steelbook, one that I'm not totally familiar with, but I love Luc Besson films, so I'm really looking forward to this one. It's not particularly exciting steelbook, you can see, it's just a picture, but there is some shininess about it around this white light or sword that he's got there. It does have an effect on it. You can see a blue sheen look. So that's quite good. We'll have a little look at that. The other one that was in the same package from Amazon, and I had to buy it separately and it took some time, was Species. Species is one of those ones that I had on Laserdisc, so it's nice to get this one back. It's a 4K edition. Picture quality pretty good, liked it. I don't know whether I'd say it was the best quality of it. I wouldn't say it was a reference disc, but it was certainly no slouch. It's really quite good. Packaging on this one is really quite nice. It's from 88 Films. You can see it look in the corner there. And quite looking forward to looking at this one again. What was her name? Natasha Henstridge, is it? Is that her name? Ben Kingsley, Natasha Henstridge, yeah, it was one of her first films. Wrongfully, really. I probably most people remember it because she had her kit off most of the way through it. But hey, whatever floats your boat. I liked it because of the H.R. Giger alien cost, you know, the effects on that. One that I'm really glad to get, and it's one that I had a little rant about, if you remember rightly, because I bought this film with a cover slip from America, and then 2 weeks later they announced a steelbook is coming out, and that is Ty West's Maxine. You can see it's not from the UK. It's got the 18 symbol in the corner, which is a European symbol. Finally got it as a steelbook, which means I've got X, Pearl and Maxine, the whole trilogy, now as a steelbook. It does make my slipcover one redundant, and I've seen the film, love it, so really glad to have that in my collection. One I can't even remember ordering, and oh my god, why have I got it? Right, why wasn't this one of the films that got stolen this week? Right, is what I was looking at, and that is Disney's Snow White, the live action version, universally panned. I must have ordered it when I was drunk. Well, no, I don't drink. I must have ordered it for some unknown reason. I can't think why. Might have been before it was all getting all the crap previews and everything about it. It's one that I definitely don't need in my collection. I probably will be getting rid of that, and I'm bound sure to get ridiculed for having it. Another one which was cheap, which I'm sure I've got, but I'm not sure if I've got it in 4K. They brought out the Mask of Zorro again. This one's the 4K steelbook. It's a 25th anniversary edition, but I'm pretty sure that my one the last time I bought was a steelbook 4K, but it could have been Blu-ray. So I need to check that out. It was cheap. It's not one of the expensive ones. And then this behemoth came this week, and I've got a letter inside it. It is the Hammer Horror version of Quatermass 2, and it goes with my Quatermass 1 that I got last week from Hammer. It's from 1957, but it came with this interesting letter. Here we go. Doesn't say anything about me on the front, so I can see here, look, the John Gore Studios Company. I'll read it out to you and I'll show you on the screen. It says, first things first, we hope you're enjoying your Quatermass 2 box set. We're thrilled to get it into your hands, and even more excited that you got it before the official release date. You're ahead of the curve. However, you might have noticed something is not quite right, namely the mailer box. The mailer box. The mailer box your order has been arrived in due to an unexpected warehouse error. This is branded with the sign of Captain Kronos and not quite Quatermass 2, as it should have been. Rather than keep you waiting, we thought you'd rather see the film and not and get the correct mailer later on. Too right, and thank you very much. Absolutely marvellous. Very happy with that. I've got it before a lot of people. Never had that happen before, really, with a letter in it. So, very happy. Absolutely fantastic. And the last one is even bigger. Oh my God. From Warner Brothers. Look at the size of this box. Jesus, man. Right. And inside here is one that I bought cheap, believe it or not, because I got it with a voucher. I cancelled my original order, and the reason that I re-bought it was not only was it because of the voucher, but because I believe there'll be a second edition which will have the actor and the set of films that I'd really like to have. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the James Bond 007 collection. This is the Sean Connery 6-film collection, which comes in a steelbook set in a tin with all 6 films. And it's got mixed results from the people that have bought this. Not because of the picture quality, but because the steelbooks are a bit lackluster. The price of it, which is quite expensive. Now, I got this, it's being advertised at 120 quid. I got this for 75. But I want the Roger Moore set. So when I've got the Roger Moore set, I'll have all the Sean Connerys and all the Roger Moores. And it'll look lovely. And it'll make me extremely happy. I think what we got to remember here is that James Bond is ridiculed a little bit now because he's a fossil, you know, something that can be ridiculed at because we've got such other fantastic films like John Wick and Jack Reacher and all of those sort of things. But what we need to remember is that back in the day when I was going to cinema, a new James Bond film was something to look forward to. Every couple of years or every 2 years, a new Bond film will be out, and it would star your favourite Bond, you know, Sean Connery, it'll be Roger Moore, or it'll be, you know, Pierce Brosnan or whatever. Okay, and it would be full of stunt work, story that doesn't make sense, sets all around the different countries, and it promoted Bond, an English special spy, and it put Brit, you know, it was listed probably as the #1 British film of that year. So it was heavily promoting Britain. I hate to think how many Americans have come over to this country because, you know, of promoting of England, and therefore Bond would be part of that. So, to be quite honest, having this in my set is quite important, really, for me, because Bond is a major part of my life, even if you can ridicule the films these days, much like the Carry On films, really. I'd love those in steelbook in a huge set in 4K. It's just whether the studios do so or not. But I'm very happy with this. I'd love a Roger Moore set. I'm pretty sure, because they've now done a Sean Connery one, that they will do a Roger Moore one. And I should think the singular title with George Lazenby on His Majesty's Secret Service will just become a standard steelbook that doesn't need to be in a tin set. It doesn't need to be in with the Roger Moore collection. It doesn't, you know, or anything like that. The other people that have played Bonds have done more films, but you can still have the tin sets of the Pierce Brosnan ones, you know, Roger Moore, Sean Connery, etc., etc. Great. So, you know, the others would all fit in quite nicely. I don't think you need a big tin to make it work. And with that, we've got to nearly 2:30. So I am going to rule out the doing some trailers, but I will make sure that they're in next week. It will include some of the things that are in here. And like I say, I don't think I've got much else to say. I think I covered everything. I did write down a couple of things, but I covered the fact that we've got 3 films to watch at the cinema this week, buying Commodore. The only other thing is that this is what stirs me up a little bit as well. I always do my little news article right at the beginning, you know, what's happening in the news, just to date stamp it, right? And I split it into 2, you know, UK and the rest of the world, and what's going on in the war. And every time I go to the news now, it wants me to subscribe. If I'm not going to subscribe, I have to accept their cookies for advertisement that they choose through their partners, of which there is 132 of them. Now, I do know that I'm circumventing buying a paper, right? But at the end of the day, I'm watching the news on telly, which is free. I can listen to the news on the radio, which is free. Why is it that I've got to pay to look and see what the news headlines were for this week? You know, I'm in 2 minds about it, because I understand that paper circulation is down for buying newspapers, and they've got to make their money somehow. And most of the articles are replacing you buying a paper, which will cost you, you know, 60 pence a day or something, right? But I only use it once a week. And to be quite honest, there's no way am I going to bloody accept all their 132 partners of shit at me, and I ain't going to pay £5 or £10 a month for something that I use once at the end of the week. It's a convenient thing to me. So I'm a little bit pissed off, really, with news becoming a subscription service when it's our goddamn right to know what's going on in the rest of the world. Or it has been for such a long period of time. We all know my feelings on free films that are coming out this month, and the fact that some people are very, very poor at the moment and just cannot afford this, and they're going to have to choose because they won't be at the cinema for very long, and therefore you might get to miss it because you're paid monthly. And buying Commodore doesn't bother me one bit, but I don't see what legacy they're going to carve away with that. And with that, what a wonderful time I've had doing this blog today. It's been absolutely great. It sounded like it was going to be a downer at the beginning. And in many ways, those are things that are going on in my mind at the moment. Nothing for anybody to worry about. This is what a blog is for. It's a diary. A diary is something where you write down your deepest, darkest thoughts. And that's exactly what this is. What's going on in Del Boy's mind this week? And you've got that now in spades. And with that, I'm going to say salute. And I hope to see you in next week. I hope you come and join me, listen to say what's going on with the rest of my week. I'll be looking after my mum, as always. I'll be looking at your stuff, if you're a YouTube person. I'll be reading out your comments, if you leave a comment. And I just hope that this has not offended anybody, and if it has, please write in your comments so I can avoid making that mistake again. And with that, I really do wish you the rest of your weekend and a fantastic week. Salute, as I always say. Bye-bye.